Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'm going to be going over gaps and gap fills and why I like using them in my trading plan as much as I can. Whenever I see the opportunity for a gap fill, I'm loving that play. And so in this chart I'm going to show you some gaps on the daily time frame and some gaps on the smaller time frames, so where we're looking for day trades. So for swing trades, I'm going to turn on my gaps indicator, so where it shows me gaps whenever they're made, or in the past it still like shows them if I want to back test. But let's just go over here to this recent one, right? Back in September 12th, we had two gaps to the upside. Okay, it's not really showing, but you can see these little gaps, big gap. And so the more overextended we are with as many gaps to the upside, the more it needs to slingshot back. It's kind of just like a rubber band. The more you pull it away, the more it's going to snap when you let it go, right? And so we gapped up once, gapped up twice, so we were really stretching it, right? If we look at the 4-hour chart on this day, we were super overbought, dark green for a long time. We just kept gapping up overnight. And so when we look at the day chart, on the next day, we did take puts paired with the Fibonacci, but that's another thing that I use in my trading plan. But we did go heavy inputs on end of day on the 12th, and then boom, we had a huge gap down because the gap needed to be filled. We skipped one gap, went straight to the second gap, and came all the way down, right? So now we have this gap set up, which in the future we could potentially fill. But basically from looking at these two gaps right here, we ended up coming down, filling it, and puts printed on that day. But if we just look at the back test, right? We look over here, we have a gap. Eventually it got filled. We have a gap right here. Eventually it got filled. We have a little gap right here, came down, got filled. Gap right here, came back down and got filled. So eventually all gaps love to be filled, right? Gap up, came down, filled. Gap down, came up, filled. Gap down right here, came up, filled. Gap down, came up and filled. So that's looking at it on the daily time frame, right? And so now let's look at on the 2-hour time frame. So whenever we have gaps on the smaller days, like just overnight gaps, right, from basically end of day to pre-market, then I'm looking for gap fills to go either way, right? So right here we gapped up. I'm looking for us to fill this gap to the downside, so now I'm more inclined to be looking for puts. Then when RSI is overbought, MACD is dark green, I'm really excited to take puts. I take it on the break, boom, we fill, right? Here we gap down. Now I'm looking to take calls. We're looking to fill that gap to the upside. Boom, big run up. Here we gap down, and then we did fill the gap and then continue down, so kind of a little odd scenario. But here we have a gap, right? And so as long as it's not filled, this was just a little crazy wick, but as long as it's not filled, we know that eventually we're going to come down. So that could be setting us up for another play, which it did on the day chart. Here we have a gap down. Now we're looking bullish, right? Boom, came back up and filled that gap. So gaps love to be filled, and I like to use them in my trading plan significantly to my benefit when having a sense of direction and where I'm going to play for calls or for puts.